currently what's going on with this mower is if you raise it all the way to the highest setting, there's some sparks that are happening. What I have found is actually this deck hanger is actually broken right over here. So if you come over here real quick, you'll see what I'm talking about. I'll drop this a little lower. So this whole part is messed up. So what's happening is this pulley right here is hidden underneath that frame. So we'll take it off and I'll show you all that stuff. But I'm gonna show you kind of what's going on. And so I'm going to set this, already set the deck level and everything, and eventually I found that I overlooked that, so we're going to fix that. But anyway, I'm going to start it up. I'm going to show you what is happening. Okay, so I'm going to turn up the throttle and then I'm going to engage. Go ahead and just stand right there. I'm going to engage the PTO and you'll see some sparks kind of happening. So I'm not sure if we were able to show some of that, but there was some sparks kind of happening. So anyway, we're going to bring this into the shop and pull this deck off and fix that deck hanger. The mower came in. Customer is saying that they replaced the blades and the blades are apparently hitting. I inspected underneath the mower deck. I didn't find that the blades were hitting at all. We also looked at the part numbers and the blades are actually not the correct blades necessarily for this. The only difference is the width. The other blades that would have came with this would be a little bit wider, but these are a little bit more narrow. So there's actually no issue with these blades, and I'm not seeing the blades hitting any part of the deck or anything. The only thing I did notice is that there's a baffle that comes out and that was bent up. So at some point in time the blades may have hit that, so we fixed that. But one thing I noticed is when I was testing the mower with the deck all the way up, that I was getting some sparks out here, and they mentioned that when they're turning hard left, that they're getting blades hitting. And I don't believe it's actually blades hitting. It's actually whatever the sparks were that's causing the noise of metal on metal. So after further inspection and stuff, I found that the deck hangers were all proper. This mower deck was not level, so I leveled it out, and everything seemed good, but I still was getting some sparks. So what I found was actually this pulley is hitting this part of the frame. All this is it's going all the way across, and it's actually hitting right here on the frame, and it's causing the sparks. Well, all of this is OE, all of this is OE. There should be no reason for this mower or this pulley hitting this part of the frame. Well, I was distracted by looking at all of this and looking underneath the mower deck, and I overlooked that this deck hanger is actually all cracked and starting to come off. So what's happened is this deck has pushed forward, allowing this pulley here to go forward and hit this part of the frame. So we got to pull this mower deck off. We got to get this pounded back into place and re-weld this. So in order to take the deck off, basically drop it all the way down, and we go ahead and pull these clips out. Pull this hanger, lift this deck up a little bit to pull this hanger off. And then over here and in the front, pull this clip off. If I can get my finger underneath it. Whoop. Where did that go? It's probably underneath. Nope. Oh, here it is. All right, so this clip, set it up on there. So then on this side, same kind of gig. Pull that clip out, that off. I usually set them up here. It makes for like a nice little tray. Then I'll lift the deck up a little bit to pop that out. And then up here, I forgot to do this on the other side. This is kind of the stabilizer arms. Do the same thing, pop the clip off, pull that, drop that down. And again, I just set the clips up here. I got to do the same thing on the other side. Sometimes you got to kind of lift up the deck a little bit to get the tension off, and that drops down. Now, we got to take the belt off. All you got to do is just loop it up and over, pops over. Same thing on the other side. And now the belt is off. So we have the PTO cable, which is this cable here. It comes up right here on the mower frame. And there's, in this case, someone put a big zip tie on there to hold that back in place. So I am going to go ahead and cut that because it doesn't look like it's a quick release type. But normally it is, I'll show you, I'm gonna get this cut. So normally these are in here, just pinched in like so. That's how you're supposed to do it. Okay, so now I'm gonna go ahead and slide this out just enough that I can gain access to the clip here without putting a lot of strain on this cable. And you can see that I'm gonna have to pinch this in order to get that off. So go ahead and apply, pinch it right there and pull it back. And then release it. Now on these, all you gotta do, I've seen them where sometimes people will install these upside down. It makes it a real pain to get back off. But basically, you just slide it down and out. Sometimes people will jam it down and pop it in place. Don't do that. It's a real pain to get back off. But this is just that tension arm. And so what it's doing is when you engage the PTO, this cable goes taut and it pulls this back, putting tension on the belts to engage the PTO. All right, so now we'll pull this cable out and set it up here out of the way. And then slide this all the way out. Okay, so now we can get a better idea of what is going on here. So let me grab my air. I'm gonna try to blow some of this stuff off. And a little bit out of the shop. Okay, so as you can see, this whole hanger got pulled back and it's just ripping along here. So I see this a lot. This happens. So what I got to do is we got to pound this back into place. But before we do that, I'm going to clean up around here and around here. Same thing on the back side. And we're going to weld this back into place. So let's go ahead and grab my die grinder. Actually, I'm going to use this guy. So all I'm doing is using a little cutoff wheel. And what I'm going to do is just kind of get the metal cleared of paint as much as possible. Grab some air here. And I'm just going to, so really you should be using safety glasses. I'm going to actually grab my safety glasses. I've actually had plenty of things get in my eyes. I've had a face full of gas, a lot of stuff that's no fun. All right, so I'm hoping I don't have to take that off. We'll kind of tuck some of this back, and let's try to clear as much of this. Now, you can do this a whole bunch of different ways. This is just how I do it. I never claim I'm a professional welder. I'm a hobbyist in that realm. I have welded plenty of things, never had any issues. So I'm just letting you know up front. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this all cleaned up, and I'll show you right after. I cleaned up the paint around here as best as possible. Same thing on this side. I did the same thing over here. Cleaned up the paint off of it in here and here. Granted, you know, I could have gone in here with a wire wheel, gone crazy and stuff. Not necessary. This thing's going to see a lot of abuse in general. So now the whole idea is we need to get this thing back in its proper place. So it is a little bent out a little bit. Usually what I like to do is take a big spanner wrench, and depending on where it's at, I can use it kind of like a lever and kind of get it bent back into shape. And so it's pretty darn close. In fact, it's basically right there. So what I need to do is I need to apply a little pressure to this, do a little tack weld in there, and then tack it on the other side, and then weld this all in place, and she should be back in business. So let me grab my welder. Now, in regards to a good ground, sometimes you can get away with these studs here. I'm gonna try doing it over here on this stud. I got my welder ready, purged, set my temp and everything. And so now I gotta get that in place, and I gotta get that tacked. Made sure everything looks good, everything else looks good. So I'm gonna go ahead and get that tacked in place. Okay, so that looks good. I'm gonna tack it on this side. That's tacked there. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and weld it here, and then I'll weld the back side, and we'll get this done. So that side's welded. So this weld is definitely, you know, overboard, but I'd rather not see the customer come back again for a deck hanger, especially on this side. So now I'm gonna add a little bit of paint after I let that cool for a little bit, and then we'll reinstall it. You gotta shake your paints. All right, so I'm just gonna add a little bit of Rust-Oleum on here, add some paint over the exposed metal so that we don't have any rust issues. This is still pretty hot. Probably should have let it cool a little bit longer, but it will be okay. All right, so now that it's painted, welded, now's the time you can do another quick look over the deck and everything. Everything else looks fine. This hanger looks fine. So this is what a standard, what they normally do on these. They usually only weld in a couple places. Same thing up here in the front. They just do a weld across there, a little weld there, and a weld there. Nothing on the back side. And the main reason why they do that is cost. They're just cheap. Generally speaking, that works, but over time things rust. The mower gets used, and possibly abused. Things eventually do fatigue and break. So now this thing is welded. We're going to go ahead and reinstall this mower deck back onto the mower. Okay, so what I like to do is re-hang these stabilizer arms here. So sometimes you got to kind of, before I do that, I'm sorry, I almost forgot because I moved this cable up. I got to make sure we put the PTO cable back on. Otherwise, you go to engage the PTO, it won't start. So I lifted this up and over and set it up there because it fell down earlier. So make sure it's properly routed down below, like so, before you reinstall it, so that you're not trying to lift this up and over once it's installed, because it's going to be a real pain to do if you're even able to do that. So now make sure you're routing this properly. So we see the belts, we see the brake arm, and you go up, or so make sure you go underneath all that, and then it connects onto this arm right here, this little hole. And you lift this up and you slide it in place and pull out. So now that we got that hooked on, pull this back. You might have to pull on this a little bit by hand and then clip that into place. And now that is installed. Now we can go ahead and slide this under and back. And then we'll get the stabilizer arm installed. Have to kind of shift the deck around a little bit and then grab our clip. When I install these clips, I always try to think of normally the mower's going forward. So if it's going forward, things are moving this way, is in regards to grass and debris. So I always like to make sure the clips are facing that direction. So if something was to hit this, it doesn't pop it off. So if I had it this way, now granted this does have a little keeper here, but let's just say someone bent this out and so it wasn't retaining properly, you could potentially pop it off. So I always try to keep all that stuff in mind. So I install it this way in case something was to hit it. Usually it'd be going this way. It doesn't pop it off. So stick it in a little hole there and then just push, and it is now installed. Then we'll go ahead, put this washer back on, this hanger on the outside, and same gig. Push the clip over and lock into place. And then we gotta remember to, see, this is what I mean. So I check to make sure it goes over here. But if you look, this arm right here is, the cable is below that arm. It's actually supposed to go above. So fortunately in this case, it looks like I can gently lift it in place, thankfully. Otherwise I have to pull that off. So now it's above and it's routed straight over, and then goes over to this clip, and then you just push that in place and it properly secures it. So that's installed. Now the front hanger, it was installed way up here, so we're gonna have to lift the deck up a little bit and get that in place like so, and then push the clip down to lock it in place. Now we got to go on the other side and reinstall the hanger on the other side. So over here, the stabilizer arm, see, it's all the way right here, and this hole's here, so I got to actually push the deck kind of back and rock it, get it in, and then same gig. Make sure the clip's going in the proper direction and reinstall. And over here, the rear deck lift hanger, push that in place, put the washer, washer on, and then the clip. All right, so now that the deck is installed, we need to make sure it is level, because now that I had to bend that back in place and weld it, the deck is going to be out of level. Oh, one more thing, I got to reinstall this belt. So the belt goes up and over that, slide around the pulley, and then up and over. Before I finalize the deck belt installation, I always like to engage the PTO and then follow the line. I'm gonna grab my flashlight real quick, because we want to make sure it's properly routed and it's not on something, not hitting anything. So it's on the inside here, it's going down, going on the back side of these, and there's the belt retainers are on the outside. It's coming over. It looks like this brake, okay, so it goes up and over. It's still within these retainers. The belt's on that pulley. Follow that down. It goes on the back side. That pulley stays between the retainers and around. There's no other retainer on there. And then up, over, and that all looks good. The reason why I double check all that while I'm thinking about it is you don't want to go and engage it and then all of a sudden you damage that belt because you didn't finalize the installation by double checking everything. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn that off now that we know everything's good. So now we need to level this deck. Since we fixed the deck hanger on there and now it's closer, it's gonna change how the deck is level. So right now, what I do is I run the tape straight down like this, making sure the plastic is touching the ground. And we got to be consistent between here and over there. So what I do is I touch the plastic on the ground, make sure the blade is straight, parallel outside, and we are measuring at 3.5. So now I got to go on the other side and do the same thing. Now the problem with the other side is that you can't really see it really easy. So what I do is I grab a mirror, kind of set up my mirror like so, make sure this blade is straight out, and then I'll grab a flashlight and flash it underneath there, pointing towards over here, so I can kind of see the blade. And then I do the exact same thing. Plastic touching the ground here, holding it up over the blade. But whatever you do, just got to be consistent. And we are measuring at 2 3/4. So over there it is much higher. So what I got to do is I got to raise this side of the deck in order to tip that side of the deck. And the reason why we have to do it that way is because there's only one adjustment. There's this hanger on this side we can adjust. There's one up in the front of the mower deck to adjust the front up and down, but as you can see, it actually looks really good, so we don't need to mess with that. We just need to mess with the deck so it's level this way and this way. So we can make an adjustment here, but we can't make an adjustment over there. If you look over here on this side of the mower deck, it doesn't have an adjustable. It's non-adjustable. It's fixed. It's just a rod that loops around and hooks on here. So there's nothing we can do in here. So all the adjustments are on that side. So we need to go ahead and raise that side of the mower deck. So to do that, we got to bring, let's see, we are low here, we're high over there. So I got to raise this side to bring that end down and bring this end up. And when doing so, give it quite a few cranks, and then let's check to see where we're at. Over here, we're measuring now just hair of 3. So let's go ahead and go in a little bit more. If I remember correctly, it was like 3.5 on that side and much lower over here. So if I bring it up to 3, I think we'll get, yeah, so we're 3 right now. On this side, we'll go over there, take another measurement, making sure blades are in the right spot. And we are at almost 3.5. So if I raise that side up a 1/4 inch, it should drop this a 1/4 inch, and so we should be in our sweet spot. So let's go ahead and raise this side a 1/4. Not here, there yet. So I'm checking a measurement again. I am almost there. I'm going to go a little bit more. Okay, so I'm at 3 1/4 on this side. Let's check on that side. And we are just a hair from a 1/4. I mean, about, it looks like an 1/8 inch. That's not going to be a big deal. You're not going to see cutting issues of an 1/8 inch between both sides. So that's within spec. So we're good there. And now on this side, so now that the deck is level, I want to see where that pulley is. In comparison to where it was before. And we are now clear. So between here and here, we are now no longer touching. And you can tell also because I can turn this, we're all the way up. I can turn it, it's not hitting anything. And if you also notice, these bump stops for the deck are now all the way up. So it's hidden here where it wasn't before. It had a little gap like this. And then on the other side, it's hidden on the other side. So we know we're level and we're now no longer hidden there where it was creating a whole bunch of sparks, and we should be good to go. So once I get done with everything, even though everything looks good. You gotta test things. So before I send anything out the door, I always test things for my customer. So I know that it is done and that I did my due diligence, that everything was done correctly and working. So we're gonna go ahead and fire up this mower. We're gonna go back outside and we're gonna perform the same test. Okay, so basically I'm just doing loops around the camera because that's exactly where they were saying when you turn hard left, that's when they were having the issues. And I would also see sparks too. So the deck's all the way up and I'm gonna go ahead and test it. And then I'm going to lower it a little bit. There we go. Now that we tested it, we know it is 100% fixed, and we also confirmed by checking, so we're all good to go.